Hello, everyone. Brad Hairston here. Welcome to Transform Now. My guest today is Andy Dyer, the automation manager at Devon and Cornwall Police in the United Kingdom. The police force is an SS&C Blue Prism customer, and Andy will be sharing some of the great things they've accomplished with intelligent automation. Welcome, Andy. Why don't you tell us more about yourself before we get started?
Hello, Brad. Yes, of course. Yeah. So as you alluded to, I'm the automation manager at Devon Cornwall Police. I've been in the post for about a year and a half now. It's come with its challenges, but we've overcome a lot of them now, and we're now on a really good platform. Before that, I was in an energy firm for about 16 years across various roles, from customer services to sales, the back office, and part of that back office role. That's where I first learned about automation and robotic process automation, to be exact. And that's where I got a passion for it. And then since then, I've gone on and done that full time at Devon Cornwall Police. And then before that, I was an accountant. So a varied background, but it's brought me here today. And I just love technology. So that's what's kind of driving me to make more automations for the public community as well.
Excellent. What's the move from the private sector to the public sector been like for you?
They're quite interesting, actually, because I think that the main, there's lots of differences. In terms of the commercial sector, it's also very driven by stats and performance related pay and financials. How cost effective can we be? But the public sector is slightly different. The motivations are absolutely looking to save costs, but actually, what can we do to serve our public better? In terms of, can we reduce our organizational risk? How do we help victims of crime? How do I personally, my team, help our police officers in the front line? That's hugely motivational. So stepping into this world has been a bit of a whirlwind, but I'm getting there now slowly.
Well, Andy, why don't you tell us about Devon and Cornwall, the community where you live and work there in the UK. I know most people are familiar with the names, but probably not the actual community. So maybe tell us about that. That would be a good place to start.
Yeah, of course. Yes. Devon and Cornwall covers, I think it's roughly about 4,000 square miles of southwest England. We've got like the Dartmoor, the moors. We've got 400 miles of coastline across all of our counties. And it's a mixture of market towns, seaside resorts, villages. I think the population is around 2 million, but in the summer, it ramps up, it triples. We have a lot of tourists from the northern parts of England and Wales and Scotland, and also from abroad as well. And there's various things we've got on offer. We've got the Southwest Coast Path and historic cities like Plymouth and Exeter. And although crime rate is generally lower than in other major cities, we've got the largest landmass across any police force in the UK, because we've got our own challenges. We've got remote communities, quite narrow lanes, extensive coastal search and rescue units that shape our day-to-day work. So the public here is very community-minded. People look out for each other. We have lots of local volunteer groups that are deeply involved in our neighbourhoods to keep us safe.
Fantastic. My parents, I know, recently traveled to Cornwall. That's one of the places they selected all the way from the US. So I when you said lots of tourists come in, I immediately remembered that they recently made a trip there.
Yes, they'll be down there.
All right, well, let's talk about automation and what that journey has looked like for Devon and Cornwall. And I know that journey began before you arrived there, and part of you making the move to that organization was really valued bringing someone like you in with your skill set, your experience. So maybe just give us the condensed history of the automation journey.
Of course, yeah. So when I joined 2 years ago, automation was being run as a project, essentially a proof of concept, and it was mostly ad hoc, macro, standalone scripts, that sort of thing, in individual departments. So we lacked kind of essential sort of strategy, governance. So we moved quite quickly. I was quite keen for us to move into a BAU function. to make sure that we had a high value RPA as the first big hitter that will prove actually that we are going to be a successful function. We looked at firearms processing was our big ones, and we demonstrated savings up to 80% on that particular data entry repetitive tasks. We standardized using Blue Prism. We built a pipeline of ideas from lots of departments. We did lots of discovery workshops with new areas, to reassure them and understand what this new technology is. It's not AI, it's RPA, which is robotic process automation. And some departments thought it was an actual robot at a desk just tapping away at a keyboard. But to reassure them, it wasn't that. So I showed them what it was on the screen.
Right.
We rolled out formal training across the team, set up internal bot development academy, and established an automated change control process so that every process that goes through a bot has rigorous testing and compliance checks before production. And today we've got roughly about 30 live automations, and then more than 40 in development queue as well. So we're moving at pace. It's just about transforming from that tactical scripting to now more of a sustainable automation program.
Excellent. Why don't you tell us about some of the automations that have had the biggest impact of those 30 that you mentioned are up and running?
Yeah, so I think for me, the first one jumps out at me is the firearms licensing one, because that one there was a local event that happened. So we kind of like flown in to kind of see how we can support that department, because they were working mainly with paper and they had digitized a lot of their processes. So we helped them digitize their process. And then for this particular RPA, used the application to create essentially any sort of task for the national firearms records to be created. That will then update the person's record and then essentially issue a renewal grant to the application, which made it much more efficient for the staff making the processing, and therefore that meant that they could get onto other more added value tasks. That was a good one. One more recent I've been proud of is the missing persons one. We have missing persons in the UK, vulnerable people. So we introduced an RPA which sped up the time that it takes in terms of how we manually search for the records and process any sort of new records that come in. That used to take hours for the people that did it. Now it takes under 2 minutes. So it's not just improving the speed of what we do in terms of internally, but the speed of actually helping our national crime agency locate these missing people a lot quicker.
Yeah, and certainly a process that you want to speed up quite a bit. So that clearly is a great use case for automation.
Absolutely, and that's one of the things that you mentioned at the start. What I like about working here, we do have a real direct benefit to the public and the community. So we're giving back, which is really, really pleasing.
Right.
And then probably another one I could think of is there's a national online submission. It's people can log basically any low-level crimes on the national website. So that comes through into we log all those data. And then this is what we've done in RPA is we've actually integrated those volume crime reports from the public, linked them, added the crime stats, and we also use a solvability matrix, and then move that onto our workflow for the officer to then complete. Some of them don't need further action. It's just for information only. And then the robot closes those as well. So that we've saved about 4 to 5 people's time and effort when they used to do this all manually. So yeah, quite a nice one in terms of volume per year, that one.
Those are great examples. And I know ESG is also a priority for your police force. How did this get linked in to the automation program and become a key underlying objective for it?
It's a good question. So when I first joined, similar time, there was another role that's created, which is the sustainability manager role. And I got together with her to understand a bit more about what we can do in terms of how that can actually make a difference.
Right.
And we came up with a parallel corporate initiative, basically. So how can we reduce our carbon footprint, enhance community trust, and strengthen governance? So early on, we realized automation could drive all those 3 pillars simultaneously. So we put it into our bot pipeline scoring. I mentioned about our matrix. It's not just about value in terms of pounds per, for what the bots can deliver, but also actually what impact is it having on the ESG metrics. So yes, we're looking at how we can reduce print and post, social impact. We spoke about faster victim response times, and better audit trails, because when I came, there wasn't really much governance in play. And this approach now is ensured that ESG wasn't really an afterthought, but it's actually baked into every project from day one.
Right. Yeah, it's surprising that more companies don't look at automation as a way to help them achieve their ESG goals more effectively. I mean, there really can be a lot of connections between the two. And I'd love to hear some examples, specific. You mentioned a few things there, but maybe you could give us some specific examples across each of the pillars: environmental, social, and governance, where you've used automation to further those objectives.
Yeah, I just touched on that previous example as well. Is a case that, because coming from an energy company, I came with a background of actually, looking at the net zero challenge in the country as well. So that's why I got in contact with the senior finance manager quite quickly, because I thought actually something we can do here to not just further public confidence, but trust as well. But touch on the environmental stuff. So some of the RPAs we've done so far for this one, we've automated the management of notice of tender prosecutions. That significantly reduced paper waste. And it's roughly saved about £70,000 annually. So it's cutting down on unnecessary printing and postage, while also improving efficiency. From a social perspective, I mentioned about missing persons. So we do victim care notifications, which is an automated SMS service and email updates to victims. So after every case milestone, they get a basic notification of what's happening in their journey, as it were. That's increased victim satisfaction scores by 30%. And obviously that builds that trust and just gives them that reassurance that their case is being considered and they're working through it. And then governance, I would say we've got one where we automate compliance checks for domestic abuse risk assessments. So this ensures we're constantly flagging accurate victims of perpetrators in police systems, which improves safeguarding and ensure we're complying with the legal obligations. And this automation alone has saved in terms of processing speed and accuracy, about £90,000 per year. So that's a really good one from that perspective as well.
Wow, that's terrific. And I assume that this is just yet another thing that builds momentum for automation when you're achieving not just cost savings or quality improvement, but when you're delivering real benefits against ESG for the police force, right? For a public sector organization, that's gotta give you even more momentum. Is that true?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's the thing you see now. We are delivering some of these automations. Other areas are hearing through word of mouth, and we're getting more demand than we've ever kind of hoped for as part of our initial plans, which is really good to see.
Yeah, that's really great. Andy, as the automation program leader, what factors do you believe have contributed the most to the success of your program?
Good question. Because when I came, like I said, there were certain things that weren't quite in place. I think the engagement wasn't quite there across the force. So quite quickly, I spoke to the chief constable and the assistant chief constables for exec sponsorship. That anyone starting this would I think the higher you go, the better it is in terms of what they can do. What that helped is I had dedicated assistant chief constables across Devon and Cornwall and Dorset Police. And they, as the exec sponsors, they were able to not only unblock resource constraints, but also champion the message across the departments, which, that's where the demand starts to kind of snowball, which is really good. I touched on governance before. Having a strong centre of excellence governance and a clear operating model is crucial. Because I've worked with various contractors and not having a best practice or standard, leads to bad builds and problems down the line where you have terminations on robots. So yeah, it's crucial in terms of making sure we have the best practice working from day one. I'm very passionate about talent development. So my team, I'm trying my best to enhance their skills and improve how my team can build, and not just build one or two, have many on the go. So we've got these internal developer workshops. They work very close with Blue Prism, and they're working through their way through certificates as well. And that's also seen officers who have finished their time in service or want to get into technology. And I've got 3 of which are now permanent members of the team that were officers, and now they're no bot developers, which they're really enjoying. So it's really helpful having their background of the police, but now they're actually building automations for their colleagues they used to work with, which is really good. And then probably lastly, I would say the cross-functional collaboration with all the different departments, especially ICT, is critical because we have them working closely with finance, supports us in terms of our development and our funding, HR, just to make sure we've got the right roles in place. And then I touch on ICT, so they'll make sure that any sort of problems or issues we have, we resolve very quickly. And something I'm quite proud of on the team is we've had the least amount of terminations for our robots for some time. So they're all working very healthily in the background.
It sounds like most, if not all, of the development has been done by your own team. Is that fair? You haven't had to use any third-party developers along the way?
So we had third-party developers initially as part of the proof of concept, but then I quite quickly rolled them off, and I felt it was best in terms of return on investment. We are a public organisation. It's crucial that every penny is spent wisely. So the quicker I could get my internal team trained up to a standard that were just as good, if not better, than the third-party company we used, the better. So now they're up and running now, and that team camaraderie is quite clear to see now. And then they're talking about what else we can do, and the future of RPA. So it's really exciting to see them grow.
Andy, as the automation program has matured, how has the mindset of the organization changed as a result of the success of the automation initiatives?
How has it changed? Well, I mentioned earlier, I suppose when colleagues, especially because I go into different areas, especially on discovery workshops for the first time to meet new people, when they see that once they've given us their idea in their head, and then we process it and then we build it, when they see these bots handling their mundane, high volume tasks reliably, their shift focuses to more, higher value judgment based work, so they can do more added value stuff, which they really appreciate, like investigations, more community engagement, all that sort of thing. Because at first, a lot of them, especially the users I spoke to, were fearing of job losses. But now that's completely changed. People are asking, what else can we automate? They're coming to me with all these different ideas, and I'm having to kind of say, well, that's it. That's AI. That's in the future. But for now, we can do this in the RPA one. So that mindset shift has gone now from, it's gone to curiosity more than anything. It's been quite an exciting cultural change for the force now. And there's not many departments now that are unengaged. Hence why I've said about that demand at the start of the podcast. That is really coming to the fore now. And I think even a couple of teams have named their bot as well, because to humanise them. Because they see the digital worker as a crucial part of the team now, because they do go sick.
Of course.
So it's quite funny to see that, how they're naming the bots. I haven't had the I've actually told them that a digital work does more than one process, but they still think it's theirs.
They think it's theirs alone, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
When people outside the automation team start naming their digital workers, you've got buy-in. So that's a pretty good sign. So Andy, you talked about success factors. Let me ask you the same question just a little differently. So given your experience at the police force, how would you advise automation leaders at other organizations who are also trying to breathe new life into their programs and build momentum? What are some maybe 2 or 3 things you would tell them or advise them to do?
Okay. Well, it's actually quite a tough question, because there's 43 forces in the UK, and we are, I think, now the 5th in terms of most established force in terms of RPA across the country. So we
Wow.
started actually supporting other forces that are on their journey, ones where they've got one RPA live or ones that are just at the very start of their journey. And what I've advised them is to start with high value, low risk cases. It's just that building that quick win mentality, just build credibility straight away. And you can see across the force quite quickly, especially exec members, and to get their enthusiasm from the start. I think without that, I think then some forces have struggled, or some other companies have struggled to maintain that sort of momentum.
Yeah.
Getting KPIs in early, and I think measuring your success is really important. We do a lot of benefits realization on the team, just to make sure everything we do has a benefit, whether it's financial, whether it's for the public, whether it's for the staff. It has to have some sort of benefit, and therefore then they can actually understand what we're doing. And I've got a website set up as well, and we celebrate all our wins wildly as possible. So, we've got different various mediums. We've got our intranet and our emails and that. So making sure that people are kind of aware, but we keep that cadence going, that they're constantly aware that we're delivering. I spoke about investing in the people before, about my team. I think that's really important. The training and upskilling across the force as well. It's actually got a lot of other people interested, actually wanting to work for the team now. They're still in some of the automation we deliver in their areas. I know they're keen to get involved themselves, which is good. So exploring the idea of a citizen developer platform to help them, that would help succession planning as well.
Yeah.
I think what else would help was embedding some governance early, so that balance that speed with control. So really define those clear build, test, release processes to avoid any shadow projects going on. And then I suppose tech sponsorship was probably the most critical thing for me in the success of this team. So linking anything to strategic objectives is massive, because we're a small team in a wide organization, quite a big one. So aligning a bot to broader goals, underpinning it to some key strategic objectives. That's how we get fine. That's how we can continue to kind of improve customer experience, our ESG goals, and just make sure that that project, when it initially stays relevant, but also funded post project to make it a success.
Wow. All of that combined is some really, really good advice. And it's neat to see that your experience and your expertise is going to impact other police forces around the UK. I was not aware that you were doing that.
I think that's what's nice about working for the police, because when I was in the commercial world, the main thing is you don't help your competitors. In police, we haven't really got competitors. We help everyone. We help. We've got the NHS. We help the NHS. Any sort of public sector organisation, we actually have. We have regular meetings with, and that's started to grow now. We've got. We initially had this RPA secret club, but now it's no longer secret. Everyone's getting involved at developer level, at analyst level, at my level. It's a really good. I'd say it's quite a good RPA community now, that's growing.
That's fantastic. Yeah, and the NHS, of course, really big Blue Prism user as well. So that's gotta help. Andy, I want to wrap up by just asking you to talk about where your program may go next. Are you thinking about AI integration, for example?
That's a good question. Yeah. So I mentioned we've got a huge amount of demand in RPA still that'll keep us busy for many years, but I'm always looking at what's next. And I think because AI is here now, a lot of us use things like ChatGPT outside of the work environment. I'm already engaging with the businesses around AI-driven solutions, because there's certain problems that come to us and we can't fix an RPA. But I know AI can. Gen AI can absolutely do that. For example, body-worn video summaries or triaging incident reports, these things can actually make a difference. So I've actually started to meet members of the exec across different of the forces that I look after to understand what their main issues are and blockers are. So see how we can help. See if large language models can support certain tasks. So I'm drawing up a list of things that they want. It's kind of a wish list. And that will drive the AI strategy, because I'm working with the strategic director here to actually see how we can underpin an AI strategy for the forces in a combined and a collective way. And I mentioned before about the learnings from RPA. I think one of the key things here is we will definitely work together with other forces in the country, because AI is such a brand new shiny tool and it's quite unwieldy. So I think working with them, we can have a collective national implementation way of working, where there's not different forces learning and making mistakes, or we can actually learn from each other quite quickly. And I think that's, for me, that's probably where, that's the next wave of policing will probably come from, the efficiency sides, which is something I'm very, very excited about.
Yeah. Well, your focus and emphasis on governance there at Devon and Cornwall will serve you well as you enter the AI waters, as they say. I think that's a place where many companies still struggle. So I think when you're ready for it, you'll approach it the right way and get a lot of value from it for sure.
Yeah.
Well, Andy, it's been a sincere pleasure talking to you. Thank you for coming on the podcast and sharing the story of Devon and Cornwall, some really amazing things that your organization has accomplished. And I love the variety of ways it's being leveraged and the great benefits you're achieving and the way you're publicizing and promoting those benefits across the organization. That's certainly having a great impact. So thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. And I wish you the very best.
Thank you, Brad.